Setting up solid messaging frameworks is the most pivotal part of the sales campaign planning process because they become the foundation for creating outreach sequences and sales content. In this lesson, we'll look at planning and creating a messaging framework. Before you begin building your messaging framework, you need to select the buyer personas that you will engage with. In the lesson on knowing your customer, you learned how to build buyer personas and how to think critically and in detail about their priorities, aspirations, business objectives, and challenges. When building your messaging framework, you need to select a single buyer persona and create all your messaging and content that speaks specifically to that one's reality. If you are not sure which buyer persona you should target, you can leverage your company's or SAP's sales plays to identify one. Your goal here is to create messaging and content that is hyper-relevant to the buyer persona that you are reaching out to. So it eliminates any doubt as to whether or not it was intended for any other audience within the same company. So for example, if I'm sending an email to the CFO or a finance manager of an auto parts manufacturing company, it needs to speak to their unique reality. They need to receive your message and think to themselves, hey, this person clearly understands my daily roles and responsibilities, my priorities, and how they're unique to the industry that I serve. Now, this isn't to say that you can't reach out to multiple contacts within the same company. You just need to craft a messaging framework template specifically for each buyer persona. The more niche you can get, the better. Once you understand who you are targeting, you can start to build your messaging framework template. Let's start with priorities. Ask yourself this. When your buyer persona walks into the office or logs onto their computer, what are the top 3 things that they're thinking about as it relates to their role and their contributions to the business? These are their business priorities, and they are intentionally broad and overarching. For example, an HR director's priorities might be to attract and retain talent, develop the workforce with scalable training systems, and build a great employee experience. Now, for each priority, there might be multiple challenges to address or aspirations to achieve, and you'll dive into that later. For now, however, your goal is to focus on these high-level priorities. After you have identified the priorities of your buyer persona, you need to understand the challenges associated with those priorities. There can be many challenges that a buyer persona has when they are trying to address their top priorities. For example, you can start to think about how a particular process is broken and what the negative outcomes and impact are to the business because of it. Maybe your buyer persona is managing their data manually, using the wrong tools such as Excel. Maybe they're managing processes solely through email messaging. Maybe there's no data or process integration between the tools they are using. Maybe they have duplicate or outdated data. When you are documenting the challenges, focus on those that can be addressed by an SAP solution. In addition to challenges, there can be many outcomes that your buyer persona is trying to achieve when it comes to their business priorities. These can also be seen as results and aspirations. In many ways, the outcomes can be seen as the inverse of the challenges that a buyer persona is experiencing. For example, if the challenges are manual processes, no integration, and low visibility, the corresponding outcome might be automated processes with integration and real-time visibility across the organization. But there is more to an outcome than that. For example, ask yourself, if your buyer persona could flip a switch and implement the perfect solution to solve their needs, what is the ideal end state they would achieve in the next 6 months? Of course, you also need to focus on those opportunities that an SAP solution can provide. Next, you need to document the results that an SAP solution can provide and that your company has previously delivered. Now, when we use the word results, we are talking about outcomes that can be quantified. For example, we were able to provide our customer with 10% increase in revenues. We grew our customers' margins by 15%. Our customer was able to gain visibility across their supply chain and identify areas of improvement where they achieved a 20% reduction in costs. Our customers saved 2 million euros over the course of 2 quarters. Next is for you to describe similar customers or buyer personas who had similar challenges and who you helped. Use metrics, KPIs, data points, or whatever you have available to help support that story. For every customer story you document, summarize it using the following format. We provide X result by solving the challenge of Y. For each customer story that you tell, for each result that you share, you should find or create content that can be used to complement or supplement these stories. Choose content that is specifically relevant to your message and can supplement or bolster the story you're trying to tell in your email. If your outcome describes what you've accomplished with an existing customer, then your content needs to be a reference story for that customer. If your outcome describes how you can help address a specific challenge, then your content needs to primarily feature that challenge above anything else. What are good examples of content? You can share customer reference stories, short demo videos that showcase one piece of functionality for one use case, infographics, explainer videos, third-party industry reports, and blog articles. However, the best content you can use is the customer story, which tells the story of a customer whose needs are similar to the current buyer persona you are targeting. It should describe how you were able to address the business needs, and it should provide the actual results that you were able to help them achieve. You should ensure that your content is ungated and available through publicly visible links. You're already interrupting your prospects in the middle of their day and asking them to take time out of their busy schedule to check out your content. The last thing you want to do is create additional friction and work by requiring them to complete a form. In terms of length, keep the content relatively short. If it's a video, keep it less than 2 to 3 minutes. Most important, however, is that it be visually appealing and have high impact. For text-based content, it needs to be consumable in about 5 minutes or less. The average adult can read about 250 words per minute, meaning that anything beyond 1,250 words risks being ignored. What if the content is good but comes from a third-party source? Don't be afraid to share it if it's relevant to the challenge that you're writing about. If it adds value, then it's worthwhile to send. Just don't pretend that it comes from you. You don't want to be accused of plagiarism. What if there is no content to share at all? If you don't have a good piece of content, it's better to include no content at all. Don't send your prospects to a high-level web page or share generic, non-specific content. Using a properly crafted messaging framework, you can create emails, call scripts, video messages, social copy, and other outreach content. And to help get you started, we have included a sample messaging framework template in the references section of this lesson.